Learn English through story. The burden of the secret. In the small, remote village of Dranfeld, life was simple and predictable. Villagers toiled in the fields, gathered for evening meals, and shared their lives with one another. Among them was Elias, a man who lived alone at the edge of the village. He was known to be a good worker, helpful to his neighbors, yet there was a strange silence about him. He rarely shared stories from his past, nor did he indulge in the gossip and banter common in the village square. Elias kept a secret, a burden he had carried for more than 20 years, one that no one else knew. It had been his greatest shame, and he had resolved to never speak of it to anyone, hoping that silence would allow it to fade. One evening, the village held its annual harvest celebration, a time when everyone would gather around bonfires, telling stories, singing songs, and sharing the bounty of their hard work. The fire crackled and leapt into the night sky as villagers passed around cups of ale and plates of roasted meat. Elias sat slightly apart from the others, watching the flickering flames. When he felt a hand on his shoulder, he turned to see the village elder, a man named Jurian, who had known Elias since he had arrived in Dranfeld many years ago. "Elias," Jurian said, his eyes twinkling in the firelight, "you've always been a good man, but I have noticed something weighs heavily on your heart. You never seem to find peace, even in the joy of celebration. I wonder, my friend, is there something you've not shared with us?" Elias hesitated. He had never spoken of the secret to anyone. It was too painful, too shameful. But Jurian's kind eyes and his gentle question broke through the wall of silence Elias had built around himself. "I have carried something for too long," Elias said quietly, his voice barely audible over the crackling fire and the laughter of the villagers. "Something I fear would change how you see me if you knew." Jurian nodded but did not push. He simply sat beside Elias, waiting patiently, letting the silence between them settle like the cool night air. After what felt like hours, Elias began to speak. "Many years ago, before I came to this village, I lived in the city of Eleonora. It was a place full of wealth and opportunity, but also full of greed and corruption. I was a young man, eager to make something of myself. I worked for a merchant who dealt in rare spices, and I quickly rose in his favor. He trusted me with his most important accounts, and soon I was handling large sums of money, making deals that could change lives in an instant." Elias paused, his hands trembling slightly as he remembered those days. "One night, I made a mistake. A shipment was late, and in my eagerness to fix things, I lied to the merchant. I told him the shipment was stolen, when in fact, I had sold it myself to another buyer for a higher price, thinking I could make a fortune and pay it back before anyone noticed. But things did not go as planned. The buyer disappeared, taking the money with him, and I was left with nothing." The merchant was furious, and when he found out the truth, he swore he would ruin me. Elias took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the fire as though seeking answers in its depths. "I fled the city in shame, leaving everything behind. I came here, to Dranfeld, hoping to start over, but the guilt has followed me every day. I have tried to be a good man, to make up for my past, but I cannot shake the feeling that I am not worthy of the kindness I have found here." Jurian listened without interrupting, his face thoughtful. When Elias had finished, he spoke softly. "Elias, we are all flawed, all capable of making mistakes. What matters is not the mistake, but what we do afterward. You have spent years serving this village, helping your neighbors, living an honest life. You have already done more to redeem yourself than you realize. But I lied, Elias said, his voice barely above a whisper. I deceived someone who trusted me. Jurian placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. We all carry burdens, Elias. Some are heavier than others, but none are impossible to bear if we share them. The fact that you feel guilt shows that you are not the man you once were. You have grown, and you have sought to make amends in your own way. That is what truly matters. Elias stared into the fire, the words slowly sinking in. For the first time in years, he felt a small flicker of hope, as though a tiny part of the burden had been lifted simply by speaking of it aloud. I cannot undo what I did, Elias said after a long pause. But perhaps I can continue to live in a way that honors the people I have hurt. Jurian smiled. That is all anyone can do, my friend. We cannot change the past, but we can choose how we live in the present. And if we live with integrity and kindness, we can begin to heal, not just ourselves, but those around us. Elias nodded, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. As the fire burned down to glowing embers, he realized that, though his secret had been a heavy weight, it had also been a lesson about the power of guilt, but also about the possibility of redemption. From that night forward, Elias no longer kept to himself. He began to share more of his life with the villagers, not just his work but his thoughts, his stories, and his laughter. He understood now that the burden of his past did not have to define his future. And though he would always carry the memory of his mistake, he no longer carried it alone. The village embraced him as one of their own, and Elias found peace in the knowledge that he had become a better man, not in spite of his past, but because of it. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoyed, then please like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.